Brooke. I'm glad you're here. I wanted to introduce to you chocolate today. Chocolate is amazing. Everyone loves chocolate, but I think there's a big confusion in the world between candy and fine chocolate. And what we make is fine chocolate. We actually have a farm. Emerald Estate is the name of our farm, where we have our cocoa plantation. It's also our organic plantation, so that the cocoa beans are all growing organically, and it also provides our garden for fresh herbs, leaves, greens, and vegetables, and some of our fruits. So it's really 30 acres of wonderful territory out here in the Caribbean in St. Lucia. Just a great opportunity for us. So with that, we have about 1,000 cacao trees here. So making chocolate is something of an alchemy. It's something that sort of comes together. There's lots of different ways of making chocolate, and it almost comes to almost like a winemaker who tends his vines and his grapes and takes his grapes and then picks them at the right time and ferments them and then processes them into wine. We do pretty much the same type of thing with chocolate, because we have the trees. With the trees, they come. Well, we have these pods, these great pods, and actually these come off of sometimes the same tree and sometimes different trees. And in there we have the cocoa beans. Okay, so right now we're getting into our season for picking, which is wonderful. So that there we'll probably have about 400 pounds of beans coming online for us from our harvest. So with that, what we do is when we harvest them, we crack the pod open, and pull out the beans. They're covered by a little bit of a kind of a citrusy, sweet mucus, and that's kind of the thing that ferments. So we pile that all together in buckets covered with banana leaves and leave it out there next to the trees. And what happens is the heat of the day, it starts to ferment. It gets up to over 100 degrees and almost 110, 113 degrees, which is what we like. It takes about 4 or 5 days turning the beans, turning them until they get really coated and very stinky. I'll tell you what, very, very stinky. Kind of, you know, if you've been into a winery or into where they're making beer and you get that big yeasty fermentation, that's what we've got going on there. So then we dry it. Okay, we take them, dump them out of the beans, and we have drying racks. The drying racks are also on the farm. Big 20 by 20 black tarpaulin rack, and we put the beans on there and we let it sun dry. Okay, the sun dries, probably takes about 4 or 5 days. If it's rainy, we push it back in. It's actually, they're on railroad things, and so that we're able to push it in if it rains and pull it out if it's sunny. At night we push it in as well, so that you don't have the humidity, because we're actually on the side, just on the edge of the rainforest here, which is in the center of St. Lucia. So on low rain, it dries up, and then that's kind of what we have. Actually, this is what the bean looks like. You want to pass that around a little bit? Doesn't smell a whole lot like chocolate, does it? Faintly. Faintly, but that's kind of when chocolate houses across the world buy chocolate. All the great houses in France, Belgium, Switzerland, Netherlands, the US, anywhere, this is the bean that they buy. Okay, it's fermented and dried and polished, and that's how it's bagged up, and this is how it's sold. In general, that's how you buy chocolate beans. There's several different varieties of beans. We have a couple of them. We have a Criollo bean, and we have a Trinidadian bean, and then we have a hybrid. So those are our three that we're using right now on the farm.
Those are the highest quality beans. There are generally 3 different kinds, and most of the chocolate is made forastero, and that's just, it's the hardiest tree, so it's, you know, the easiest to maintain, but it has the weakest flavor. So the stuff that we have is the really nice, finicky, good flavor stuff.
So with that, the beans we then bring them here, and here in our chocolate lab we roast them. So the roast is a very important component, because we can roast them just like a roasted coffee. You've had plenty of coffee. That's a light roast, a medium roast, a dark roast. And that refers to the amount of time and temperature that you have in a roaster. We can use a roaster like a coffee bean roaster that roasts, but we actually use an oven and slow roast it, so it's just time and temperature, the temperature over the period of time that we can vary the type of roast. The roast is really where you're going to start to get some of that chocolatey flavor. Here, why don't you pass that out? Okay. Take one of these, if you would, in your hand, because what I want to do as part of our sensory tasting here today, just take one and hold on to it. You could smell it. Okay, it's got a little bit more of a chocolatey essence to it right there, but now what we're going to do is take it and crack it, okay, like a peanut. Take it and crack it, and then catch it into your hand. Catch it into the palm of your hand, the whole thing, the shell and everything. Now taste that, or smell that, I should say. Wonderful, huh? Okay, so smelling that, the first thing when you're doing a sensory taste, so now you have that big toasted, aromatic, almost like a roasted, brownie kind of flavor to it. A little bit of caramel flavors going on and as well. So if you take the inner pieces of those, not this outer skin, but the inner pieces, those are called nibs. So if you take that and taste it, just taste the nib, unprocessed. Okay, no sugar in it. So you're not getting those essence of chocolate sugars. You're getting that essence of toasted chocolate.
Very nutty.
Very nutty, exactly, almost like a nut. What we do is a process then called winnowing. A winnower is actually a big blower, and what it does is cracks the bean, just like we did in our hand, but it cracks it a little bit more efficiently, and then it blows away the shell. And what's left is that meatiness, or the nib of the chocolate. That meatiness of the chocolate is a combination of cocoa butter and the cocoa. So what we do with that is take that and process it with stone rollers. We have a machine called a Santa, 15-pound stone rollers, two of them, and they roll over the bean, and crush it down to a liquid, which is called chocolate liqueur. To that chocolate liqueur, we have the option to add as much sugar as we want. So a 60% chocolate bar that you see actually has 60% chocolate in it and 40% sugar. Or it could have other emulsifiers. We only use pure sugar, local sugar for ours, and so it's a big difference. We also make a 70% bar, and also, again, that's kind of what we're going to be tasting with this. So you got a first taste of that. So I want to taste you as the process goes, because this is interesting. We were just, this is from fresh bean. Kat roasted this just yesterday.
Yep. Oh, here.
And this is been grinding for how long, Kat?
About 36 hours.
About 36 hours. So you'll probably never get to taste chocolate like that. Okay, they're just right, still being grinding. We probably need about another 10 to 12 hours to grind that.
So it's going to be a little bit grainy.
Right. What we do is, right now, it's probably at about the graininess. That's probably about 23, 24 microns, believe it or not. And when you get down, we're going to bring it down to about 18 microns, whereas some other fine producers will conk it afterwards, which will fine it even further, and I'll get down to about 15, 16. So it really melts in your mouth. But we actually like the sort of stylistically, we like a little bit of graininess in it. To me, it's a little bit more handmade, authentic, as opposed to grinding it down till it's kind of like disappears in your mouth. So that's kind of one of our style differences that we're going to do here. So what I'd like to do is also kind of take some chocolates and taste it, and get your opinions of what you're tasting with this as we're going through it. Now I'm going to, let's start off with a little less sweetness. So what we're going to do is take this, and before you taste it, I want you to take a look at it. See a little bit of the shine on it, and smell it. Okay, smell it. So the anticipation of a little bit of the floral, the aromatics, a little bit of caramel to it, toastiness, and then give it a taste. And when you're tasting it, chew on it a couple times and then stop. And then, like in a wine tasting, breathe out through your nose. Close your mouth and breathe out through your nose. And you get the sensation of the fuller flavors, a little bit of the caramel that's in it. And it's not that we add in caramel, this is just the toastiness and flavors that we have in the chocolate.
The cacao beans will pick up the flavor of the stuff that it grows around. So it grows around a lot of mango trees, and so the beans themselves are pretty fruity, which is really nice. I like it.
And again, the thing that'll suggest the difference between chocolate and candy bars. Chocolate is pure, and so that when you taste it, it's very fulfilling. A candy bar is not fulfilling. It's all sugar. It's sugar emulsifiers, blended things, other fats that are in there. And so it really is not that interesting, but the sweet just allows us to kind of like pile it in. Here, after you just had that one little nib, is very satisfying. It's actually very satisfying, and knowing that you've eaten a nice piece of chocolate. And you know so that's kind of what we do. Then I want to do a 60%.
Okay.
Pass that around. This is actually going to have a little bit more sugar in it. Okay, so 60%, a little bit more sugar. And again, smell it and take a little bite the same sort of way. So here, a different flavor. And even though it's 60%, which on the chocolate market is very little sugar, it helps define the chocolate. This is a lot sweeter, but also very interesting. Here I think the fruit shines, but in the 70 it actually shines a little bit more. Here you have a little bit more of a toffee sort of flavor from the sugar and the combination. We don't add anything in, but here we're going to tease you a little bit, because what we're going to do is we've added some cocoa nibs. So now we're going to have a little bit of the nuttiness of the cocoa nib. That cocoa nib is what we tasted with no sugar on it. So we're kind of adding in a no sugar compound into the sweet 60%. But you're also going to have a little bit of, well, you'll tell me what you're tasting. Different flavor, huh? What are you tasting from that? Nutty. Exactly. Without nuts. But it's a textural. We think nuts. Our brain says, oh, that's like peanuts or cashews or hazelnut, which all would be wonderful in this. But this is just the cocoa intensifying the flavor, so kind of teasing the chocolate. And then the finish is interesting because the cocoa nib has a longer finish than the chocolate. So afterwards, as you're just tasting in your mouth now, you have a little bit more of the bitter chocolate coming in. So now I want to taste you on another item. Think about what you're doing. This is 100%, this is the chocolate nib ground down. Okay? It has no sugar. So you may not want to eat the whole thing. You may just want to take a bite. He's daring. He's going for it.
I'll do it too.
Okay, so here.
Now we don't have water.
Now, no sugar.
Want me to pass around the 60
Here.
so you can...
Well, let's pass around the bar. We'll save the day here.
Yeah.
So here, just so you can see the effects of the sugar. And that's why, in general, we do like some sugar, and I think you can start to see the difference in some of the sugars and some without. This is what our bar tastes like. This is a piece of, which bar was this?
60.
60, okay? So when we process it, it's aged a little bit. This is not aged. This is, so this is aged a little bit, so it has a little bit more depth, just like a wine. So it makes it a little bit more interesting. Multi-dimensional is really what you're getting here. So there, you've really got some great flavor. There you have some very satisfying, full content to it, which makes it very interesting.
And then another thing is the texture of the chocolate, because the one of the things that makes chocolate so special is the cocoa butter, which is a really, really cool fat. It's one of the only fats that doesn't go rancid naturally. As it ages, it just dehydrates. So like a couple years ago, they found like 1,000-year-old chocolate in South America, and you could eat it. It wouldn't make you sick. It would just be really gross. But so
Right.
it's very expensive though, because they use it in cosmetics and all that stuff. But what it really does is it makes chocolate smooth, but it's very interesting in that if you were to take this chocolate bar and you were to melt it on the stove and then pour it on a piece of paper and wait for it to turn into a bar again, it wouldn't do it, because the cocoa butter has crystals in it, and the crystals need to be properly aligned in order to get the right chocolate texture, which is a process called tempering. And so you have to heat it to a certain temperature so that all the crystals are melted out, and then you have to stir it. You have to agitate it really well as it cools down.
And actually what you do is seed it. You put in some crystalline chocolate, like we'll put in our finished chocolate, this is already crystalline and smooth, into the new melted. So this, in other words, we would take this kind of melted chocolate, add in a piece like this into it, and stir that through. As you stir that through, that process, as it comes to appropriate temperature, is called tempering. And that's kind of what gives you the snap on this. When you have a good bar, it's a little warm for that snap here now, but generally when you crack a bar and you got that nice snap, that's from tempering it clear and clean with it.
And it also makes it shiny. Well, have you ever like gotten a bar, like a chocolate bar from the grocery store, and you put it in your hot car, and then you drive around for a little bit, and then when you get it home, it's got this weird kind of like powdery thing on the top? That means that the top has gotten out of temper. It's called bloom.
Right.
So it's still perfectly safe to eat. It's just that the texture is not as good as it could be.
Right. So talking about the cocoa butter, when I was talking about taking our chocolate that we've processed and ground, we add sugar to it to make chocolate. At that moment, instead of adding sugar, you can process it in a different fashion by putting it into a press called a blad. And what happens is we press the chocolate through the blad, or the muslin screen expresses the cocoa butter. Okay, so the cocoa butter as fat comes out, and then what you've pressed in, the remainder is actually cocoa. So it's a dry cocoa block that's pressed in, and the butter comes out. So that the extra butter we add we don't at this moment, but we could add it into a 60%. So if we wanted to have the same chocolate content, make it a little bit richer, we can add a little cocoa butter and a little less sugar. So we can actually add the same volume of sugar as the 70%, but adding instead in cocoa butter. So that would again be just another technique of adding flavors in a different fashion, as opposed to just the two dimensions of chocolate and sugar. And again, when you're making milk chocolate, what you do, milk chocolate actually is about 36% cocoa, and what you're doing is adding in the cocoa butter as well as dry milk. You can't add liquid to chocolate because it will seize. Okay, so that's what happens if you've ever worked with chocolate and some liquid gets in there, it seizes up, and that's not good.
Like really, really big grains.
Right.
Not like just a little grainy, but like chunks. And then white chocolate is not actually chocolate at all. It's just a candy made out of cocoa butter. So it's got the cocoa butter and the milk. It's got an emulsifier to keep it together, usually some vanilla for flavor, and that's it. So it's got the same texture as chocolate, but it's not actually chocolate.
Right.
Yeah. One of the other things that you should probably know if you're going to buy chocolate like at a store, it'll give you percentages like 55%, 60%, 65%. That is cocoa mass. That is all of the cocoa product in there. So that's cocoa solids and cocoa butter. and they don't tell you how much of it is solids and how much of it is butter. So it's possible to get a 55% bar that's darker and more chocolatey than a 65% bar because of the proportions. So you kind of have to try that out on your own.
Right. Yeah. And again, there's all sorts of styles of chocolate, and you know, I think the purpose of what we want to present today is, first off, the process of cooking, but also the sensory tasting, being able to understand how it works on your palate and how your mind perceives the flavor. So what we want to do, if you have any questions, we'd be glad to answer. We've actually got some chocolate bars for you to take with you. And I've also got a cheat sheet for you to take a look at. Kind of when you go home, you'll be able to do the chocolate tasting, and also kind of comparing notes as to what kind of chocolate flavors, the types of chocolate flavors that you have. So let me just share that with you.
Because all of the different, like the chocolate companies want to have a consistent product. So they have like a flavor that they intend, you know, just a specific flavor that they want, and they roast it and use different blends of beans from different places to try to get that consistency.
Right. So what you see on the chart here is it's a wheel, like a tasting wheel. And on the very center is the most simplest flavors. So you have earthy, fruity, you have roast, you have the nutty, and then when the next row gives you a couple of different types. So if in the idea of nutty, you have the types of nuts it could be. In roast, it could be a very light roast, a dark roast. The cocoa could be cocoa or chocolate. And then as you get further out, it's even detailing it even more into the types of like a dry cocoa, a chocolate milk, a chocolate ice cream, that type of thing. So you can kind of verbalize, because that's one of the tough things, is to verbalize flavors. We just eat it and we say it tastes good. Yeah. But when you read like a wine description, and they're talking about how it's got the blackberry and raspberry and plum and dry cherry flavor and a little bit of tobacco and nuttiness and fruits, that sounds really interesting. So that's what this chart is for. That's how you kind of use this chart to kind of say, okay, I see how that is, and we can talk about chocolate in that fashion. So lastly, if we would, want to give out a bar to each of our
Absolutely.
participants. Any questions that you have?
Thank you.
Besides having a great day, you can come to the farm if you haven't yet. The farm is available to you for farm tour, so you can do that and take a look. Throughout this weekend, we actually did a farm tour earlier where we went to the farm and showed how to pick the beans and did a whole processing and cooking class at the farm. But we do these festivals. This is one day of our chocolate festival. We have a mango festival, and next coming up actually is a Spices of the Caribbean festival. So we kind of explore the nature of our foods, our ingredients, and the cultures behind it. So that, again, it's just not eating and saying, wow, that was great. But we add a little bit of culture and depth and flavor to it. So hope you've enjoyed today.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, a pleasure. Okay, enjoy the rest of the morning.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.